Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us both in person and virtually to our first Wheelhouse Talk of the 2021-2022 academic year. My name is Abby Sachs, and I am the program assistant with the Peter C. Cook Leadership Academy here at the Hauenstein Center for Presidential Studies at Grand Valley State University. A quick note, in compliance with Grand Valley's COVID guidelines, we ask that you keep your face mask on for the duration of our presentation today. Thank you for working with us to keep our campus community safe and healthy. Each year, we welcome in a cohort of students from Grand Valley and neighboring institutions to intentionally reflect and grow in their journeys towards ethical and effective leadership, just as our founders, Ralph Hauenstein and Peter Cook, intended. Throughout the year, our students follow a curriculum centered around 6 leadership competencies developed by Dr. Corey C. Miller. This year, our students are focusing their development on problem solving, empowerment, social responsibility, listening, ethics, and responding to change. Looking back on the past 18 plus months, which have been, to say the least, very strange, I think we can each say that we've earned our stripes responding to the changes in our communities, workplaces, and world. At the same time that the lines between work and life blurred as a result of the pandemic, our country found itself reckoning with how deeply different our life experiences can be based on the identities that we hold, and the need for greater collaboration across industries to face an increasingly interconnected world. For our students, who represent over 40 majors and an even greater diversity of lived experiences, it's vital to understand how who we are meets with what we do, and what can come from that intersection. I'm deeply grateful to have 4 of our own Cook Leadership Academy alumni joining us this afternoon to kick off our Wheelhouse Talk speaker series with a conversation about leading at the intersection of identities, industries, and experiences. We are eager to collectively expand our leadership knowledge through the sharing of their personal journeys. As our community and society continue to shift and evolve, leadership is key. Thank you all for joining us in this conversation as we each strive to be better leaders in our own ways. I would now like to introduce one of our outstanding CLA fellow candidates, Rebecca Muir, who will be introducing our panel of speakers this afternoon. We will also have our panelists join us on stage at this time. Please join me in welcoming Rebecca and our panelists to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Rebecca Muir, and I am a second-year fellow. And I'm very excited for today, as this is the first in-person Wheelhouse Talk I'll ever have attended. Today we have some outstanding panelists here, and we're all excited because Wheelhouse Talks are always a valuable asset to Cook leadership, as I got to learn the different definitions of leadership based on each speaker. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to who we have joining us this afternoon. Up first, Mr. DeMario Bell. DeMario will be your moderator for this evening. He also graduated from the 2016 Cook Leadership Cohort. He has held many leadership roles and sorry.
No, it's fine.
You're making me laugh already.
Okay, I'm done.
He strives himself on his inclusive leadership and mentorship that he's led along the way. He's currently transitioning into his role as the head of community at Jobwell, which helps the African American community, Native American community, and Latinx get the support they need to be outstanding students and professionals. Next, we have Danielle Harris. Ms. Harris has experience in international marketing, where she worked for nonprofit organizations and reached out as far as North Africa, Western Europe, and the Middle East. More recently, she's settled back closer to home in Michigan and founded and is the lead consultant of Harris Consulting, where she uses her values and assets to help those people's businesses grow and prosper. Following her, you have Ms. Carol Reese, who graduated in the 2017 Cook Leadership Cohort. She has background in international business as well, as she worked on 4 different continents and speaks 5 languages. But due to a change in passion, she now finds herself working at Spectrum Health as an occupational therapist. Graduating alongside her, we have Mr. Lawrence Williams, graduate of the 2017 cohort. He's from Detroit and is very proud of it. He also strives in leadership and has founded CORE alongside a different alumni from Cook Leadership, where he helps support small businesses and startups in any way that possibly can. He's also a man of many hats, so he's not only a CEO, entrepreneur, but also a worship leader and a musical recording artist. So we have quite a panel list selection for you today. So please help them feel welcome, as I'm sure we're all eager to hear what they have for us. DeMario?
Thank you, Rebecca. Let's give her a round of applause. Well, I just want to first say I am so honored to lead this conversation today. And I just want to say thank you to the Hauenstein Center. I want to say thank you to Cook Leadership because it has been at the foundation of how I lead, the learnings that I've learned from not only the professional staff, but my peers. And as many of you know, and especially our current fellows, I mean, the people who are in your cohorts are just outstanding individuals. Lawrence is a part of my cohort and just is rocking it out, so I'm super excited to be having this conversation. And I really want today's conversation to be just that. The panelists and I, we've had a conversation. We're going to try to make this as conversational as possible. But what we endeavor to do tonight is not to marvel over topics that we've already heard or that we've already talked about. What we endeavor to do tonight is provide you with more tools in your toolkit on what does it mean to be an inclusive leader? What is our working definition? And then what does it mean to lead at the intersection? Because many of us, if not all of us actually, we are not one-dimensional people. And so many of our intersectional identities are showing up not only in the classroom, but also in the workplace. As our world becomes more diverse, we need to know how do we work not only with domestic teams, but also work with global teams as well. And how do we create acts and moments of care and sense of belonging in the workplace, but also in the classroom. So super excited to have this conversation, and I am going to get into the talk because I can talk all day long, but I'm going to piggyback off of where Rebecca left us, and I want our panelists just to say a little bit more about themselves before we move into our conversation. And so Danielle was, part of one of our inaugural classes here at CLA, and I want to open it up with Danielle by telling us, what have you been up to since graduation?
Well, first, I just want to make sure that I comment on how exponentially this whole group has grown since I was a part of it. I know we were meeting in the university club, and it was just a small handful of us, and to see it grown to what it has over the past 10 years or so, it's just phenomenal. But since I graduated in 2011, I worked for a not-for-profit that is based in the construction industry, and I was doing social media marketing. I did that, I did video marketing, I did a lot of branding work, and then eventually I transitioned into global marketing. So I was helping to plan trade shows, I opened up an office in Dubai, coming up with strategic plans for how this construction firm or this construction concrete specific group can make sure that buildings that are constructed with concrete don't fall apart. That's a very important thing, especially with earthquakes and sustainability, making sure that building codes across the world are making sure that we can feel safe and confident in the buildings that we live in. So that is what I've been doing for the past 10 years. I've recently transitioned a lot of the marketing skills that I've gained to help people in the creative space come up with marketing plans for themselves. There are so many people that are out there, specifically artists and authors, that are so passionate about what they do, but aren't very confident in what or how to get their name out there. And so I help those people. I find a lot of passion in helping people that have a spark, share that spark with other people. So I've been very, very pleased with the work that I've been able to do so far, and I'm so glad to be able to speak with all of you all today and help you guys as you grow and blossom into great leaders. I know that I was at one point sitting out here in the audience like you all, and for me to now be on this side and to impart some of the wisdom that I have at this point, it's a true honor. So I'm so thankful to be able to talk with you all today.
Thank you, Danielle, so much. Hi, Carol.
Hi, yeah, what a pleasure to be here. My name is Carol, and I was a part of the Cook Leadership Academy in my mid-40s. I thought it would be a great idea, not because I was having a midlife crisis to go back to school, but rather because I kind of thought it would be a good retirement plan to go back to school. My undergraduate degree was international business. That was here from Grand Valley. And I worked in corporate America for over 20 years, flying all over the world, living in multiple places, and had a great experience. And then, like I said, decided to go back and get my third degree and change careers completely. night and day. I went from having a career where I worked, 60, 70, 80 hours a week to a career where I work part-time. It's fantastic. The changes, the diversity for me are just immense. So working in corporate America was very competitive, long hours, but mostly male-dominated, if I can say it. And now that I've switched over to healthcare, it's a completely different leadership style. I'd like to talk more about it as we get into the conversation, but it's really opened up my mind to, like we're talking today, to the diversity of what leadership can be, because when I worked in corporate America for 20 years, I didn't know there was a different way to lead. And now that I switched into the industries, I see a very, very different way to lead. And not to say that one is, completely perfect and the other one's not, or anything like that, but it's just very different. And so I find it interesting.
Thank you, Carol. Hi, Lawrence.
Hey. So I've been doing a lot since I graduated in 2017. When I graduated, I was working for a marketing firm. And then I started working for an insurance firm where I worked up until this past April. I also at the same time started singing. Well, I've been singing since I was 16 years old, but really singing, really gaining a passion for it and just going out and doing it. And ended up getting an internship with a large organization that I just finished up actually. And that has opened up a lot of doors. So I've been recording my own music, been helping other people record their own music, really doing that. I now own my own business. I got rid of the other job a few months ago. So I own my own business where I do just a little bit of what Danielle does, but on the business side, it's really helping people start, run, and manage their own business. So taking it from startup phase to growth phase is really what we like to do. And a lot of the lessons that I have learned in leadership and that I get to apply now, I was thinking as our other panelists were discussing, I actually learned as being a part of Cook Leadership Academy, and the mentor that I had who was able to really speak well into my life and just really be able to provide the solid foundation that I didn't know that I needed at the time, but definitely so grateful that I was able to get, because now what that helps me do, now that I lead my own team of now 8 people, it allows me to be able to lead in an impactful and positive way. From Detroit, born and raised, single mother, grew up in poverty, went to Detroit public schools. And so it's just amazing to see, even when I drive back through my neighborhood, just my life's journey, my own life's journey, to see how many doors and how many opportunities were open for me by people who sat in positions, some of which we all get to occupy now, who made a decision that was impactful to my life and helped change the trajectory of my life. So I'm happy to talk about that too later.
Well, thank you so much, Lawrence. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Danielle. I would say that Grand Valley has been on the cutting edge or spearheading. What does it mean to be inclusive? What does it mean to be inclusive leaders? I remember my time on Student Senate where as student senators, we were sitting on university committees, and that was by design. And I just want to give a huge shout out to President Emeritus Tom Haas, who really set that structure here at Grand Valley, where as students here at the university, we were in on decision making that the senior leaders were making on our behalf. And so to be in on those conversations, that was pivotal to Lauren's point. So when I got into the marketplace, I was ahead of my peers in terms of how do I engage with individuals who are, there's an age gap, there is how we process information, that gap. So all those nuances and all those skills that you would inevitably learn in the marketplace, Grand Valley taught it already. Yeah. So I came in ready to engage in conversation. I remember I emailed President Haas after my first meeting in my first job, although I worked throughout college. And I felt so proud because I felt that Grand Valley had really set me up to be a citizen in this marketplace. And I just couldn't think of a better place than to be here at Grand Valley. So go Lakers.
Right.
So
Right.
to move us into our discussion, because I do want to be mindful of time, again, we're talking about inclusive leadership today and what that means. And so the working definition that we have is at the intersection of all the identities that we hold. And for me, that's being Black, male, from Detroit, first gen. All of those identities are with me when I'm making decisions and when I'm in a room. And I tell folks, I can't leave those identities out of the conversation because I just don't know which of those identities will allow me to own that relationship in a proprietary way. And so I tell people it might not be the DeMario who's the professional or the DeMario who's not going to be the head of community. It might be the DeMario who's the Christian, who loves potato chips, who watches Grey's Anatomy,
Yes.
whatever it is.
My lemon head.
I have to bring that to the table as well. So Danielle, I want to start with you. When we talk about leading at the intersection, tell us, what does that mean for you?
Leading at the intersection, similar to what you said, you're not a 2D person. You're not just a flat piece of paper. You're three-dimensional. You have many identities. Like you said, I show up as a Black woman. I show up now with big, puffy, curly hair because that's who I am. That grows out of my head. But I also show up, when it's appropriate. It's like, oh yes, I really like BTS and K-pop. And as that comes into conversation, that's another connection point with people. But it also, I realize that I'm an able-bodied person. That like a lot of people, I have right-handed privilege, and that's something that a lot of times you don't recognize that you have. There are a lot of different aspects to that, and so it's showing up, knowing that who you are, but also appreciating the fact that other people have other intersections that they're at, and being accepting or willing to understand where they are coming from and how you can work together with that. Everyone has their own separate experiences, and they're all valid. And at times you're right, they're in conflict with each other. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Maybe it's time for a conversation that's not a confrontation, but an actual true conversation of understanding. Because there can be people that you're just like, I don't agree on some of these things, but I really like this person and I connect with them on so many other aspects of life. This one point, maybe not so much, but there's so many other things, there's so many other aspects of a person that I could connect with. And so when it comes to leadership, it's understanding the people that are next to you, below you, above you, and understanding where those people are at and how you can connect with them as a human being. Because first and foremost, we're all humans. And so that's the first intersection that we should be connecting at.
Yeah. Oh, well said. Thank you, Danielle. Carol, for you, what does it mean to lead at the intersections?
Yeah, for me, leading at the intersection means a point of being able to have honest conversations. Honest conversations, like you said, about who you are, who I am as a person, but also with listening to the other, what other people have to say. There is so much today that we just, when we don't listen, when we don't take time to look at other people's differences and to value them, that we miss out on. And so when we come together, I think we have to be intentional about it and really take time to listen, to delve into ourselves even. I think especially as young people, it's really important for us, and growth is continuous. I mean, I guess I say young people, but even in midlife, I'm learning so much. It's kind of amazing to me how much I'm learning. My kids I have 2 kids, and they're both in college, and I feel like I'm learning just as much as they are about this. But yeah, it's being honest with yourself, and being willing to hear the honest from others as well, and being open.
Oh, thank you, Carol. Lawrence?
Yeah, I don't think I can say anything better than what they've already said. Bringing exactly who you are, the whole of who you are, to the table and to the conversation, and not neglecting that, and then understanding what your role is in that space in terms of helping other people, in terms of, see the image of, you climbing the ladder and then you pulling it up after you.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that, right? Leading at the intersection means having people around the table, especially, who, as a leader myself, I don't mind having people at the table who are better than me at something. And then admitting you're better,
Yep.
right? You can do this better. This is your passion. This is what you're good at.
Yeah.
And then, of course, empowering them and trusting them to be able to just go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And so almost like your story, born and raised in Detroit, Black, raised by a single mother, raised in poverty, came to West Michigan, attended Grand Valley, which was completely different environment than Southwest Detroit, where I'm from. And then, after doing that, there I was, Black again, singing, born and raised in a Pentecostal church, singing for, sorry, the mic is all over the place, the mic pack, but singing for, a Wesleyan church with majority white folks, different cultural cues, different traditions, different languages, right?
Yeah.
And so being able to be my authentic self in that space, and then be able to accept the fact everybody's not like me, and that's what makes you special.
Come on now.
We don't need thousands of Lawrences running around. What makes us all special is that we have our own thing going on, we have our own deal, we bring all of us to the table, and that's what makes us more effective as people working together in community.
I really appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. And what comes to mind for me is that when we talk about leading at the intersection, and all of you have touched on, is that being unapologetic and showing up as who you are, bringing the totality of who you are to whatever setting that you are. I would add to that and even say that's also acknowledging and affirming the identities and the totality of the other people who are also in the room as well. Mm-hmm. And I often tell people, because I work at an education technology startup company with my colleague, Michelle Burke, who used to be the director of student life here at Grand Valley. Shout out to Michelle. Talk about a Laker connection, that's a different story, but Michelle Burke has been so wonderful, but so much of what Michelle and I do in our work is that we're working with diverse teams all day long. And in my role, I'm part coach, part mentor, part project manager. I live at the strategy level in my job. Michelle sets the vision, I'm creating a strategy off of that vision. Then we have colleagues who implement that. I know that I'm not good at execution. That's just not something that I do. Mm-hmm. But to Lauren's point, what I do is I assemble a team of folks who I know who are good executors, and I empower them to lead where they are. That's my role as a coach and as a mentor, to make sure that as I am leading, I'm also creating the capacity for folks to lead where they are, and also too creating the capacity for folks to fail. Because here's the thing, I tell people diversity, and I'm shifting a little bit, I'm gonna bring us back. Diversity is just representation. But we forget about the equity and the inclusion piece of that. Mm-hmm. The inclusion is, if I fail, you're not gonna shun me or you're not gonna throw me away, but you're gonna embrace me and continue to edify and pour into me. And that's where some organizations are dropping the ball. Are you creating the capacity for folks to lead where they are? Because not all leaders are at the top.
Right.
Leaders are at various scales of organizations. I tell folks the best job I ever had was an entry-level job that I took right after graduating Grand Valley. And it was the best job I ever had because my boss created the capacity for me to lead where I am and gave me projects and trusted me and to say, I know you can do it. But he also created the capacity for me to fail. So if and when I did fail, and we're all gonna fail because failure is inevitable and it's gonna happen. And that's where the learning happens. I felt good about that because then we can take that and it can use that as a coaching moment. But going back to the teams in which I lead, I feel this responsibility to make sure that I'm acknowledging and also learning, Carol talked about it, on what motivates my team to work, what motivates my team to be their best selves. Mm-hmm. It's not about me and what I need to get done on my priorities, but it's like, who are you? What's going on in your personal life? How's your mother doing? Mm-hmm. How are you doing? How can I pour into you today? Or how can I take loads off of you today? Because I think we often get caught up in our KPIs, our goals, our priorities, that we forget there are humans that are producing the work. I'll share this, and we'll move to the next question. This past week, my uncle was killed walking his dog by a driver. Just who would have thought you're going out walking your dog and you wouldn't come back home? And I remember the next day I was at work, it weighed heavily on me because I have a personal relationship with my uncle. But what I love so deeply about my boss is that he created that space for me just to break down and to be human, because we're all human. And once I was able to be human for that moment, then I can focus on the work.
Right.
Because we often forget that what happens in our personal life or the life outside of work impacts how we show up at work.
I want to just a quick point on that. That's really good. I had the same issue for a member of my team just last week who I'm on a Zoom call with them, and they are just not doing good. And that's number one for me, right?
Yeah.
Because you cannot show up for work, and I do not want you to show up for work if at home it's just not going well.
Yep.
And then to that point, we as leaders, we've got to make sure we're good,
Yeah.
right? So one of the things that I keep in mind for myself, and that I challenge my business partner, he challenges me, Lawrence, how are you doing with your mental health, right? How are you staying sane?
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing this, that, and the other. And whatever it is, that let it be. But create a regimen where you do. For me, I'm up at 4:30. I'm out for my walk. I'm out for my workout.
Yeah.
I do my reading. I do my podcast listening before I jump into any work. I want to make sure that I'm good.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not, I cannot show up at work and then be good.
Come on now.
Or lead people. I am not a nice person, let alone a nice boss, if I am not okay. And I think it's recognizing that not only for the people that we lead, but just for ourselves, recognizing if something is bothering you
Yeah.
and you need to talk about it, or you need to take a break,
Yeah.
right? My days are Mondays. I do absolutely no work on Mondays, right? Because I hate Mondays. And luckily I work for myself because I do not like working when it rains. So everybody knows that when it rains, don't call me. I'm not able to pick up the phone right now. But it's able to know and be able to realize who you are.
Yeah.
And say, okay, wait, I am not feeling well. I am not comfortable with this. I am not okay.
Yeah.
Let's regroup.
Yeah.
If I can add
Please,
something
Carol.
to that
Yeah.
as well. So I'm an occupational therapist. I work for Spectrum Health. And Spectrum had an initiative for 2021 for the whole entire organization, which is now the largest employer in the state of Michigan at about 30,000 employees, is belonging. They wanted people to feel like they were belonging, or they belonged. And so our department received this nifty little emotional scale chart. And at first I kind of chuckled at it and thought, oh, that's kind of funny, because I'm still kind of transitioning into this other world. I was in business for so many years where nobody ever asked you how you felt, and it didn't really matter, and it didn't really care. You need to come and you need to get your job done, right? And now I'm moved into this other side, and so now I'm faced with this chart, and every morning we have this team meeting, every day, 15 minutes. And the first thing we're supposed to do now is talk about, at the top is like euphoric, and then it's like happy, and then excited, and I don't know, it goes all the way down to being like depressed and angry and really, really mad. And so every single person in my department is supposed to go around, and you get a little magnet with your face on it, and you put your face on how you're feeling for the day. And then you can choose to talk about it or not. You don't have to, but it just took me some time to transition to feeling comfortable with talking about my feelings and with my department coworkers. I thought that was really initially strange. But I've come to realize now, gosh, how nice that is.
Yeah.
It's really, really nice, because you find out things about people you didn't know.
Yep.
When someone comes in and says they're angry about something, and then they choose to talk about it, you learn things, or they're super excited or happy, whatever it is. And now I've really come to appreciate this, sharing emotions. And it's quick and it's fast, and I think it brings us people together as a team.
And I want to quickly comment to what Carol said, and we'll move on if Danielle has nothing to say. But let me just,
Yeah, well, I got a little bit to say this is outside of the norm. Going in and feeling like, okay, let me just make it until whatever because people aren't listening. That, at least to me, that was the norm. And hopefully learning from this and you guys going into the future can help change that because, like I said, bottling it up and just be like, if one person says like one more thing, like that tends to be more of the culture for right now, and not showing up as your whole self is more of the norm. But I'm so glad and thankful that there are more people that are realizing that that shouldn't be the case, and that eyes are opening up and mental health is coming to the forefront. But like I said, that has not been my experience at all. But I'm so glad and thankful that that is the case for other people, and that I hope that that becomes at least the norm going forward.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Danielle and Carol, because also too, being a motor for showing who you are in the workplace emotions, it's not a sign of weakness or unprofessional. But society has conditioned us to believe that if you show your emotions in the workplace, you are weaker than or you're unprofessional. And it's absolutely not the case. I find that my colleagues who are vulnerable to share with me are the most strongest. Because it takes a lot to be able to come to work and say, I'm not having a good day, and this is what's happening in my life. So I really honor that and create space for that as well. I want to move us, and then I'll add some more ad lib. You know, one of the key tenets of CLA is having a mentor and having someone who can show you what life could be like, wherever you are, support you, guide you. And Michelle Burke and I have the pleasure of working for a company. That's what we do. We close the opportunity gap through mentorship. And mentorship is so personal for me, that's a different story. But I want to ask our panelists, which leaders, it's going to be an inclusive question, which leaders, mentors, or impactful people in your life have demonstrated an inclusive leadership, and what qualities did you see that resonated with you? Carol, can we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the woman who is in charge of all of therapy, rehabilitation at Spectrum right now, she's an amazing person. She almost once a month will send an email out, and it starts off personal. She talks about what's going on with her house, with her kids, with her husband, with her dog. You know, and I'm a little bit older, so it's kind of strange for me to have people talking about their feelings, because how I grew up, my generation, we just didn't talk about feelings, especially in work settings. But it's nice. I've come to really appreciate it. And she consistently talks about how much she values us as a team and her coworkers and her peers. And she gets into the specifics of our jobs and talks about, you know, the things we have to do that are difficult. Wearing tons of PPE every day. I have to wear an N95 mask all day long and put a different gown on with every single patient, and I mean gloves and everything else. And she comes in and she experiences these things with us to, you know, to go through it and to feel it, and then talks about it in these letters. And I just feel like her leadership, when she comes, she always brings, you know, snacks or food or whatever, and it's sincere. I really believe that I think good leaders know people by name. They know their kids' names. They know about their lives. They remember what interests them. They take personal interest in you, and it makes me surprised every time. Like this woman who, you know, is at this level up here, comes in and remembers all this. Because when I had a job where I was higher up, it just wasn't, we didn't look at the personal part of it so much. You were expected to be a team member, and you were expected to do these things. It wasn't like anyone really cared. I remember at one point in my career, when one of my coworkers, when I worked in corporate America, and I was in international account management for most of my career, and then I did some sales, international sales. One of my coworkers had a brain tumor, and he was a guy in his mid-40s, had 2 teenage kids, and nobody came in and said, well, gosh, do you want to work part-time from home, or do you want to go part-time, or can we, you know, whatever. it was just business as usual. And I thought, wow, this is just so strange. Like, and so I remember going to him and going to my boss and saying, hey, if there's reports that I can do for you, or if there's extra stuff that I can help with, I am happy to help, like, you know, lift your load, whatever. And I think that that's the kind of thing that we need to do more of, is look at our coworkers and say, how can I help? If you're capable of helping, how can I help? Maybe your coworker has a baby and the baby cried out last night and your coworker didn't get very much good sleep. Well, can you pick up some of the slack? Can you go outside of yourself to see if you're capable of giving more? Can you give a little bit more? I think good leaders do that.
Yeah.
Good leaders go above and beyond and pay attention to.
Above the call of duty.
Exactly.
And very attentive. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Carol. Lawrence.
Tyrone Carter, who is now a state representative back on the east side in Detroit. But I met him in high school. He was a sheriff's deputy. And then when he retired from there, he came to volunteer at the school, and he was really a huge mentor, a huge factor in all of our lives, but especially mine. And he would definitely stop us and ask us questions. He would chastise us as if he was our father. And we had come to really look up to him and his wife as our parents. And you didn't want to get in trouble by the Carters, but it was really that relationship that really helped. It was that kind of leadership. I remember when I came to Grand Valley, when I was graduating, and he gave me my graduation gift. He gave me a calendar, and I'm a debate coach now, and so when my kids graduate and they get ready to go to college, that's what I give them. I give them a calendar. I give them a planner. And I didn't understand why he gave that at first, but of course, then I got here freshman year, then I understood exactly why I needed a planner and a calendar. But it was so that I could be able to use my time wisely, and it wasn't just about doing things. It wasn't just about busy work, but it was also about investing in people. A quote that I heard from him and other leaders is that when you invest in people, people will invest in your vision.
Come on.
And I remember that every day. That's something I repeat. When you invest in people, people will invest in your vision. So it's less about, even now especially, it's less about what I need to do, and more so, how can I help my team? Right? How can I help? I'm allergic to cats, okay? I love cats, but I'm allergic to cats. And I sneeze. If somebody has a cat at home and I walk past them, I'll start sneezing. One of my team members, she has 2 cats. She couldn't take care of them. She was out of town for a couple of days. And she was like, Lawrence, I just need somebody to go home to my house and take care of my cats. Here's the code. That's exactly what I did, to take care of the cats. It's things like that I would have absolutely never done. I can promise you that. I would have never done if I hadn't stayed in contact, as I continue to do, and remember that kind of leadership example and advice from a guy like Tyrone Carter.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you so much. Danielle.
I remember when I was in high school, I had a leader that was over the National Honor Society. And, there were a whole bunch of people, very high achieving, go-getting type of people. And I tended to be on the quieter side. And she took me aside and said, I think that you could do more than what you're doing. And pushed me to say, like, maybe you could be a leader in this area. I was like, well, okay, if you're saying that, then I will. And then continue to push me and say, like, I think you could do more. I think you could do more. And brought other people that might not have thought that they could do something, push them to say, like, I think you can. I think you can do that. And that, to me, is true leadership, of saying, I see something in you. I think you can do more. I think you can go further. Because without that, there are some people that just need a push, They think that they can, are competent. They see other people like, oh, but they're louder, they are this, they are that, whatever. But sometimes it's just the person that says, like, oh, you know what, here. Like, I see you, I'm validating you. You can do more. I'm going to push you up a little bit and then say, okay, yes, you can do that. And then that's all the confidence that you need in yourself to be like, okay, I think I can do that. I actually think I can. And that was very impactful to me. So whenever I see someone that's like, oh, they're quiet over there, but I see their potential, I see that they can do that. They might not see that in themselves yet.
Yes.
I'm going to push them up.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Pushing people more, being sincere, investing in people. I think those are key qualities. I want to quickly add to that, and I want to move. I was at a CLA event, actually. I was in the audience. And this was around when we found out who our mentors were going to be. And I have to say, and I say this story in jest, because now I'm having dinner with my CLA mentor tomorrow, who I haven't seen in 3 years, but wonderful person. In fact, I lived with them for about a couple of weeks when I graduated, because my housing didn't time up perfectly.
I remember that.
But relationship, if we didn't have an authentic relationship, of course he would not have invited me to come stay with him and his family for 2 weeks, but that's a different story. But I did want him as a mentor because I didn't have a definition for mentorship. I thought a mentor was someone who shared my career paths or my major. And that's not entirely true. I mean, there's some validity to that, but that's not entirely true when we're thinking about the whole person. And it wasn't our career interests that bonded us. It was the totality that you mentioned earlier, Lawrence, where we bonded. And I just so really appreciate that. So we were at a CLA event, we were meeting, getting to know one another, and Terry Losey, who is here in the audience, let's give a round of applause for Terry Losey, Executive Associate to the President Emeritus. And let me say, Terry has been, along with Michelle, one of the first mentors I've had here at Grand Valley outside of President Haas. I remember I was over at DeVos and I saw Terry Losey getting lunch, and I walked up to her randomly and said, "Are you Terry Losey?"
Something you would do. Something you would do.
And Terry invited me to have lunch just to learn more about me. And what I love so much about that conversation is that Terry just was really invested in me. I felt like I was the most important person in that conversation. Here, one of the senior leaders of Grand Valley is having lunch with me, so imposter syndrome is kicking in at that moment. But we're here at the CLA event. Fast forward, we're here at the CLA event. I'm talking with my mentor, and I signaled Terry to come over because I wanted to introduce my two mentors to one another. Terry comes over, and her assistant is also at the event as well. And I remember my mentor and Terry exchanged pleasantries, and when her assistant walks up, this was my first real moment of seeing inclusive leadership in action. When Terry introduced her assistant, she said to my mentor, she said, "Hi, this is my colleague from the president's office," and then introduced her name. And I felt so good, and just all the butterflies, because there are power dynamics already in the conversation perceivably. But what Terry did was that she eliminated those power dynamics, and it said, "This is my assistant," the role, she humanized it, and said, "This is my colleague." And I just so greatly appreciate Terry for creating that moment and that act of care, and that's just who Terry is. So that wasn't just a moment of, this is the right thing to do, it was because that's what's in Terry's heart, and I really appreciate that. Thank you, Terry, for doing that. Really, really, really thank you, Terry. I'm going to ask this question to Lawrence and to any other panelists who want to answer this question just for the sake of time. We've talked about what inclusive leadership looks like. But can you tell us, when is the time that you've seen a failure in leadership, and then how did that change your view or alter your view about leadership?
Oh, plenty of times. Especially, a lot of us, we worked in corporate America at one point. And so we have bosses who have deadlines, who are trying to get things out, and I definitely understand that. And the biggest failure, I think, that I was able to actually learn from, because we had Failure Lab in CLA. I don't know if you guys still do that, but we had Failure Lab. And one of the failures I was able to quickly learn from is exactly what went wrong in that situation. And it really was, it was all about the work, and it wasn't about the people. And so we couldn't do anything right as a team because we had home going on, right? We had things on our mind that were really going on, and nobody at work, where, I mean, if you think about it, we spend a lot of our life at work.
Yeah.
around the people, right? Especially if you're working full time, 40 hours a week. You spend a lot of time around these people who you don't really get to know, you can't really get to know, and that really has an effect on you. And so what I saw there was just, hey, let's do it. And if you can't do it, well, I'll find somebody else. Well, that's the wrong approach.
Yeah.
That's the wrong approach to take. And of course, things didn't get done. Deadlines weren't met. And then everybody was looking around trying to figure out what happened. Well, we know what happened.
Yep.
And that is we all can do the work, but we don't all know each other. I know you because you're the person who happens to walk past me every morning. But other than that, I don't know you from Adam and Eve. Like I don't know what's going on in your life. I don't know what you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And because, as a leader especially, because you don't know that, you don't know, as you mentioned earlier, you don't know how to channel that, right? I'm always trying to think about, what are you passionate about?
Yeah.
Because whatever it is that you're passionate about, I know that you're going to want to do over and over and over again, and I know you're going to be the best at it.
Yeah.
So as a leader, what I want to be able to do is channel all of that positive energy, all of that energy in the right direction.
Yeah.
To be able to meet the goal.
Yeah.
And so whatever I have to do in order to do that, then I can do that. Whereas I feel like in teams, most teams at least that fail, to take a huge horizontal approach and say, look, we want you to be the jack of all trades, and we're going to pay you this little much. and then hopefully you can figure it out as you go. That's not the right way to lead.
I hear that. We got time for one more before we close us out. Anyone else?
I would just encourage everyone that works in a work environment to think of those people. Your coworkers don't, your colleagues don't necessarily have to be your friends, but I would just encourage everyone to think of it as it is your team in the sense of like, if the sink ships or the ship sinks, you're going to be on it as well.
Come on now.
And so, for me at this level where I'm at now, I always try to do some nice extra stuff. One of my things is decorating. I decorate, we have a table, and I always bring a tablecloth for the season, and I put some seasonal stuff on there, and bring some fresh plants from home, because a lot of companies don't pay for plants anymore. So I'm kind of like the decorator at work, and that's one of my contributions to just making it a little bit nicer environment.
Yeah.
It's simple, it's easy, it doesn't really cost a whole lot. But I would just encourage you all of us to think of that, you don't have to be best friends with these people, but how can you care?
Yeah.
I mean, you can still care we're still all human beings, right? We
Yeah.
can still care for one another.
Thank you, Carol. I'm gonna close this out. We have one last question, and then I would love to start with you. How can fellows today, can you get just one thing, one practical tool, one practical piece of advice? What would you share with the fellows to take away from our conversation today and apply it in the settings in which they will occupy?
I think you all heard a lot of different stories about how to be good leaders and examples of things that people have done. But remember that no one's perfect at all, and there is no graduating level of, I'm now a perfect leader. That doesn't happen. That never happens. And the second that you think that, I think I'm pretty good at this, you discover some other aspect that you're like, I need to work on this now. It's an ongoing, lifelong process of becoming a leader and a better leader. You're never going to be a perfect leader, but you can always work on being better than you were before. So get outside of your comfort zone. There are times where you're like, I don't really know if I can do that. Do it anyway. And that helps to create that culture, like you said earlier, of failing, because failing is really just learning. It's really, we just need to rebrand that. It's just, that's a lesson that I learned on that. But keep continuing to learn and keep continuing to admit, that wasn't right that I did. I admit that, and I'm going to learn from that. And the more genuine you are with that, then you're that much closer to becoming a better leader than you were yesterday.
I love that thing. I love what you and Carol said. Lawrence, let's close it out with you.
I can just piggyback on that all day. I usually ask myself not just what I can do, because we all have people who can do certain things.
Yeah.
But I ask myself, what's possible?
Amen.
Right? And I do that with the team as well. Not just what you can do, because if you can't do it,
Yeah.
somebody can. The answer that we need is in the room.
Yeah.
What I want to know is what's possible.
Yeah.
And if it's possible,
Yeah.
let's go for it.
Yeah.
I'm a business owner not because I'm a good leader. I'm a business owner because I'm not afraid of failure.
Yeah.
And if you fail, perfect. Learn from it, pick yourself back up, try again. Call your mentors, talk to your mentors, keep
Yes.
that relationship going,
Yeah.
because that will be important. It's extremely important to me. I talk to a mentor of mine. I've got 3. I talk to a mentor of mine every single week. They're all specialized in different areas. They all know different things. They all got different bits of advice. And then I also have, for my 4th week, an accountability partner.
Yes.
Right? So when I meet with them
Yes.
every month, this is the things that I said that I was going to do in the past month. I want you to hold me accountable to make sure that I do that. So I'll definitely say take that. Continue to talk to your mentors. Get you an accountability partner. And then write the vision and make it plain. If you got a goal,
Amen.
the easiest thing to do is write it down. I got mine on my wall. I can see it every morning before I leave out. I know what the goals are. The vision is written, it's made plain. Now I just need to go out and execute and get it done.
No, I want to say that sounds like very cliche, because I hear these things all the time. It's like, oh yeah, do this, do that. But it was not until, I will admit, not that long ago that I realized, like, they're cliches for a reason, because they work. Like,
Every
it's a
time.
real thing that
Exactly.
you do.
Every
So, like, yeah, so, like, write it on the wall. When people say, like, oh, I write the thing on a mirror, like, actually do that. And
Right.
remind yourself.
Yes.
Like, you might think that, like, oh, that's like a dumb little thing that I hear all these people at these, panel discussions say, like, I didn't believe it either. And then I was like, oh, that's real. Like, that's a real thing. Like, actually do it.
Just go, Carol.
One last
No,
thing.
no, no, please.
Yeah,
Please.
Just 3 things that I'd say if you're thinking about as you move in life is grace,
Yes.
extend grace
Yes.
to others, stay curious,
Yes.
always stay curious, and be equipped, which means you have to learn how to have honest conversations.
Yes.
So I don't think honest conversations come easily for most of us, and there are different ways to do it. You can use humor, you can use sarcasm, you can use direct, you can use compassion, but those 3 things, grace, curiosity, and being able to have good communication, good, honest communication.
I love it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you. I mean, we heard so many good nuggets. We're going to open it up for Q&A, please. Abby, we're ready. But I just want to quickly say this. It's been such an honor to engage in this conversation, and I'm really looking forward to the questions that you all have for the panelists and myself. So please don't be shy. Questions? The ice has been broken, so more questions to come after.
Hello,
Hi.
my name is Cameron Jowers. This question will be for DeMario.
Okay.
What has been your biggest challenge since graduating and entering the workforce?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you so much. Well, I'll say this. I graduated with an English degree. And I always tell people the good thing about a liberal arts degree, one can do anything with it. The bad thing about a liberal arts degree, one can do anything with it. And so trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my degree actually was my biggest challenge. And trying to figure out how do I connect my passions and interests with, a career that will be sustaining. And what I had to let go of is choosing a career based off of economics, but really allowing myself and allowing space for self-exploration. And that is something that I encourage all of my higher ed leaders today is, how are you creating the space for your students to be in that self-exploration phase of their life and to be okay with that? Because oftentimes when we come into college, our parents, our community, put pressure on us to say, well, what are you majoring in? Well, I don't know. Oops, excuse me. Oops, I'm so sorry. Well, I don't know. I'm sorry.
I thought we were advanced stealing again.
The purpose of college is really to come and discover and define who you are. It's in our mission here at Grand Valley, shape our society, shape our people. And so for me, that was a real challenge for me. But I want to go back to Lawrence's point. it was really my mentors who really helped me, Cam, to really help me think through how do I connect what I was learning in the classroom to what a career. I worked in fundraising before I moved over to the ed tech startup space as a leader. And so, but just really figuring out what I want to do. But also, too, let me go back to what Carol said. We extend grace to others, extending grace to myself to say, it's okay. Take your time. I don't need to be the CEO coming out of Grand Valley.
Right.
Because I tell people, if you got everything that you wished for, what would you aspire to have in 5 years? Mm-hmm. Enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, and trust it along the way.
This question is for whoever wants to answer it. What personal attributes of yours do you feel like made you an effective leader?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. Feel like you made you what?
What personal attributes of yours do you feel made you an effective leader?
I call it no excuse every day. No excuse Mondays, no excuse Tuesdays, no excuse. I think that honestly comes most likely from my mother, who was more so, Lawrence, it's either you go do it or you are not.
Yeah.
It's, and it's no excuse. If you can't, okay, great. Tell us you can't. But if you tell me you can, we all get 168 hours in a week. Don't come lying, talking about you ain't got time, you're too busy. So what? We all are, right? No excuses. And I think that what she was able to instill in me has really helped me become a, because I'm always trying to figure out, that's why I said before, I don't ask what you can do, I ask what's possible. Because if I know it's possible, if I can see it's possible, I can figure out how to do it.
Come on.
Because it's no excuse. It's no excuse Fridays. I can figure out how to do it. I can create the roadmap. I don't care if I got to learn. I go to the University of the YouTuberations. I talked about that earlier. If I got to go there, it's free. It's perfect. But I'll figure out how to do it. Just let me know that it's possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's one attribute that my mother really was able to instill in me that really helped me to become an effective leader.
I think I just like to sit back and observe. I think that people underestimate the power of sitting back and observing.
Oh, yeah.
You can figure out a lot of things, and you can find out what's possible by sitting back in the room and seeing what other people can do. And then you can see what's possible.
Come on now.
But taking a moment, don't always be the first one to act.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you rush to action, you take an imperfect action. Now, there's no such thing as a perfect step. But if you sit back and wait and think for a second, then you can probably take a better action than you always had. So don't always rush to be the first to answer. Take your time, take a breath, take a minute, and then act and do something. So that comes with anything. That comes for, like you said before, deciding what you want to do. Take a breath, take a second, observe, see what's out there, and then act. So that's what I like to do, and I think that's taken me pretty far.
Thank you guys for being here. My name is Nicole. I believe it was Danielle and Carol who had said that they had traveled for their jobs for an extended period of time. Is that right?
Yes.
So I guess my question is for you guys. How did you utilize leadership in a space where you might not have been comfortable with the language or the culture, or just kind of like leading through that discomfort of being in a space that you didn't really know all too much about, maybe initially when you had first gotten to, wherever you had been?
Great question, Nicole.
Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm very familiar with being an only. So only woman, only black person, youngest person in the room. So that's something I've experienced for a great majority of my life. So going into another environment, actually that's probably equipped me well into doing that, because it wasn't the first time that I did that. But from other cultural aspects of just being curious, I think Carol said that before, being curious about things and not letting that set you back, and being okay with the fact that I'm the only one in this particular position. All right, so there you are, one, everyone always notices or remembers me. All right, so how can I use that to my benefit? Because like I said, I'm always the one with the big poofy hair. All right, so they're gonna remember me. So how can I capitalize on that? And how can I do that to break ice, ask questions, and learn more and get more? But honestly, like it was just that's just how it happened. But it takes practice to get comfortable in uncomfortable spaces. So don't say like, oh, well, I'm just going to stay where I'm most comfortable all the time, because that will not get you outside of your comfort zone. Like, you can take small steps, but yeah, you just got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Come on now.
Yeah, one of my experiences, I went to Japan, and I lived in Japan for a year. Didn't know the language and was not familiar with the culture. Actually, it was kudos to, or thank you to Grand Valley for offering me the opportunity to go. And it was the initial year of their exchange program there, and they couldn't find any students who wanted to go, so they called me. And worked out great, so I went over there. I think curiosity, it goes a long way. Being open-minded. I like to talk and I like to ask questions. And so when you're curious and you want to know about people and about, the environment, you're going to have to learn the language. And but it's also a lot of patience with yourself, patience with your being in a different place. I had, prior to going to Japan, I had spent a year living in South America, a year in Europe, living over there, and then I went to Japan thinking that I knew all this stuff and I had learned all these languages and I would have no problems at all, and boy was I surprised. Asian culture is just very, very different, and so I had to just a lot of patience, and for me it was the first time being a minority. I had never been a minority before in my life, but I was a tall white woman in a very at a time, 30 years ago, I had a lot of people around me who wouldn't sit by me on the buses or trains, and little kids pointed at me, and it was the first time in my life sticking out for a year, and that was just a lot of grace, not taking it personally. I had a little old lady come up on a bus and grab my ponytail and pull it as hard as she could. She was really mad because her husband or one of her relatives had died in Hiroshima, and she was yelling at me, and just, you have to extend grace. You don't take it personally. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One more question. Yeah.
Thank you all for the great conversation. My question's for Carol. Did you find that you encountered any ageism as you made that transition to occupational therapy? And if so, how did you confront it?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. I was very nervous to even attempt to go back to school. I had already done a master's degree, so it was my second master's degree. A lot of people in my life thought I was crazy. I had a great job. I had a good, and it was tough because in the field and the job and the work that I did, I was an expert. I was a peer. I knew everything. And here I was going back to school to go into a field and an environment where I was a baby. I knew nothing. So it was very, very humbling. The ageism part, I tried to not let that bother me when I went into my cohort in that master's program. Thankfully, I wasn't the oldest person. There was one other woman who was older than me, but a lot of the people in the class were younger. And funny story, my first day of class, I showed up waiting for the professor to hand me the syllabus because my whole entire previous education, the professor always handed out a syllabus, and little did I know the syllabus was online, and not only was it online, but work had already been assigned. Mm-hmm. So I looked at the student next to me, I was like, well, where'd you get that? And he was like, well, online. And I was like, oh, I was supposed to print something. And then he was like, yeah, and we already had homework. I was like, oh boy, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. So you learn fast, and you just try to have thick skin, try not to let it bother you, try to, I think that youth brings a certain beauty, and age brings a different beauty, right? Wisdom versus new ideas, and so it's great to have both together. Mm-hmm. There's beauty in all of it.
I love it. Thank you so much, Carol, and thank you so much for asking the question. We're going to transition now to our networking portion of it. I'm going to leave us with 2 pieces of advice touching on the things that Carol, Lawrence, and Danielle has left us with. If we could leave you with anything, is A, bet on yourself. No one's going to be a bigger advocate for you than you are. So bet on yourself, take risks. And then the second thing is change your self-talk. So whatever narrative you have been telling yourself, that person's version is over. Change your self-talk and bet on yourself. Thank you all for being here. We look forward to networking. Thank you.
A huge thank you to all of our speakers. I'm so glad you were all able to join us today. I think a big takeaway for me is that when you think about intersectional identity, it's not just one intersection, right? Like, DeMario, you live in Atlanta, you know what Spaghetti Junction is. It is all of the intersections, right? And each one of those brings value in a different way to the table.